Hello, Carolyn Gage.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm doing great. The pandemic was extremely hard on me, but I am every day coming back from it, just more and more. It was really, really challenging for me, but I am here now.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad you're here.
You and me both, sister.
I'm
You
used
and me
to
both.
speaking with you as a friend, so this is more formal and weird for me. I'll try to stick to the questions. Okay, so what called you to become a playwright?
Well, one of the first things I have to say is that I am autistic, and I am increasingly seeing how that affects almost everything in my life. Everything in my life. And as a child, I was in magical kingdoms, and I'm realizing now that um, is very autistic. I made sounds, and I like to climb into closets and little nooks, and I just inhaled fairy tales, and I had a dollhouse that I when people would say, "Oh, let's play dolls," and I'd see, pictures of girls putting little outfits on their dolls. No, in my dollhouse, there were 50 dolls, and it was a palace. So they had extreme. I mean, it's kind of like in England. They have very complicated relationships fraught with jealousy and competition, and there was murder and mayhem and kidnapping, and there was jewels and that were stolen, and it was just endless. I would go into the dollhouse and spin a yarn that would last for 6 hours, and I would be completely absorbed in it. And I look back, it's like I was actually playwriting. And I just called it playing with the dolls. It'd be like, well, Carolyn's playing with the dolls. But I remembered at a certain point, my mother came to me after school was out and said, "You have to pack the dolls away for the summer because I don't know if she knew it was autism, but she knew that her daughter was off the rails, and it was not in a good way. So I just had a set of miniature dolls that I would then take into the woods. Like, it's like an addict. It's like, oh, yeah, right. Take the dolls. I've got a spare. So, yeah, it just was, I'd go into an altered state for as much as 6 hours at a time. Now, my family was not happy, not a happy situation. I much preferred the world of the dolls, much. But I believe I was working out a lot of the issues in my childhood because working with real people was not productive in my experience. Both parents were addicts, and one was a perpetrator, and my brother was high service needs autistic. So no help there. But in the world of the dolls, people said what they were supposed to, and you pushed one button and this thing happened. Things went the way they should, and justice prevailed, and the innocent were protected, and all these things that I had just given up on the outside world. It was like, and I don't know what a child without the dolls does, because my father was an abusive tyrant, and he won for 18 years. He won and got his way and made big bank consistently. It was, but I had an alternative world that was wonderful where things worked the way they should. If I hadn't had that, I think I would have become cynical and maybe even perpetrator identified, because he was very powerful in the community and everything. So there's I owe a lot to the dolls, I have to say. But I didn't identify as playwriting really until just a few years ago. I was like, I really was a playwright from the time I was about 6. So that is how I began, and it was in a slightly different medium. And as I'm sure you can relate, Deb, there's just times when you're working with real live actors that you like bring back those dolls. They did not have attitude unless I gave it to them. They did not have attitude. So, yeah, but yeah, it was a slightly different medium, but it was essentially playwriting.
I always say playwrights are gods of their own worlds.
Absolutely.
Control the weather, what everyone's wearing, what everyone says, the fact that anyone exists. And I always marvel at that moment of letting go of that intimacy with the story and sharing it. I just feel like that's such a big leap. That's such a an opposite experience of the creative process, you know, and I'm always in awe of that.
Yes, I do think.
Oh wait,
Hi.
I lost your volume for a second. Say it again.
It set the bar very high for reality. It's like I'd be at a party and I'd think if I was back home working on a play, I would be having a much better time than I am right now. Or the characters I'm creating seem infinitely more interesting than these people. And this is, I'm realizing, is an autistic thing, is that we really enjoy our own company and our engagement with an area of special interest. We don't produce oxytocin like neurotypicals do. We don't bond like a room full of people doesn't get me going. Mm-hmm. What gets me going is my relationship with my special interest. And I think that literally produces endorphins. It's enormously pleasurable, but it does you know, I could always go home and be by myself. And I think for a lot of people, that's like, oh, that's the last option. Let's not do that. I'll go home with anybody rather than me. And for me, it's like, oh, that's really close to as good as it gets. So people around me, it's like, that's the bar. That's where it's set. And usually I do go home. So I think it's, but it's been helpful for me to understand that's normal for autistic people. Because I was always aware other people like being around other people. For me, it was always kind of like, all right, if I have to, you know, but me and the dolls, you know, that was the jam, you know.
Yeah. So the next question is, did you begin in a different medium? And I feel like you went straight into storytelling is what you're sharing in your own world.
Well, I mean, it's like is sort of manipulating dolls, which is more like puppetry,
right?
But I didn't know. I think, you know, in my grade school, theater didn't capture me. I think we did little pageants once a year in grade school. It wasn't until high school I really found theater, and it was like, oh my God, where has this been? And by then I wasn't playing with the dolls anymore, so that was wonderful. But I do think if my elementary school had had a theater program, I would have probably been like, yes, that's me. That's what I want to do. So I blame the different medium on the school system. And we had a music program. We didn't have a dance program. No, we had music and art, but we didn't have dance. We didn't have theater. So
so interesting.
Did you have theater at the elementary, middle school years?
One of my first memories, because I've been writing my own book, is yes, not sort of. We didn't have classes, but I and my friend Tanya Hill always finished the board work early in, I think, 4th or 5th grade. And so she would just tell us to go to the media center and work on a play. So she was my director, and I was Red Riding Hood, and we created this whole, but we never got to perform it. It was just getting rid of us, you know. It's like, and then we had sort of a troupe come in wearing all black, you know, leotards, and we had to sit in a circle in the cafetorium, and they created their own VOMs and just had a few blocks, and I was like, what is this?
And I remember, I think the first play was The Mousetrap or something. No, it was some 1X, but yeah, it was a revelation, and I'm like, damn, I'm 15 or 16. Damn, this is late. This is really late, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So let's start talking about your monologue. You have a book of monologues published. There's so many choices. I chose this one because it came to my theater. There were so many to choose from, but this seemed like such a relevant story. And one thing I've discovered in putting together this anthology is the power of creating the chapters. And it doesn't have to align with the canon, you know. I can label my chapters in a way that makes sense to me as a director and a producer. And one of the categories has become biography, which I kind of love. And you do that so well. But you're in with the Venus veterans, you know, at the top. But biography is such a tricky thing to stage because sometimes it can feel like it should just be a Wikipedia page. But it's so powerful, and you do that so powerfully well. So tell us about this.
When I really didn't find my voice till I was in my early 30s, and I realized I was lesbian, and that was wonderful. And I felt pissed that I didn't know my people because I really didn't see lesbian culture. This was before the internet. And I think I knew lesbians existed, but they were in biker bars or something, And so coming out as a lesbian and seeing them everywhere, and also then discovering how many famous women that I knew about were lesbian and I never knew, I really got passionate about putting these women on the stage. That was kind of the mission. And this one particular woman, Charlotte Cushman, really caught my eye because she was the greatest actress in the English-speaking world, which is to say the UK and the US, although I don't know it was the UK back then, England, Britain. And she was the top in the English-speaking world for 4 decades. That is an incredible, the shelf life for actresses. And Deb, you know this more than hardly anybody. It's, let's see, between 18 and 32. Yeah, 29. But you can be 29 for about 5 years if you really work on it. And so 40 years, top of the game. Is like, how did she do that? And then I find out she's really tall and she's a woman of size. She's a fat woman. And she is a butch woman who has a wife and introduces her as such. This is my wife. She used those words. This is the 19th century. And I'm like, well, this is just not supposed to happen. Because, in theater, you get to play the whole range of bimbo to ingenue and everything in between, And she's cross-dressing, and she's cross-dressing Cardinal Wolsey and Romeo. And I'm like, well, I'm going to write a play about this woman because I think being fat and being butch and being lesbian are secrets to her success. When the mainstream theater would tell you, well, honey, go into being a stagehand. You don't have any future on the stage. And I'm like, no, 40 years, 2 continents. That's impressive. So I wrote the last reading of Charlotte Cushman and kind of covered all of that. And what did I do with that thing? I had your questions. I'm going to have to answer them, but anyway, there it is. So anyway, this was, she's doing this tour as she's dying of breast cancer. So it's the last reading, and she's not performing anymore. She's getting up and doing readings from books and, greatest hits from her career. And that's sort of the convention of the play, which she shares. She was just a riotously funny, but also very Shakespearean actor, and just a character so much larger than life. It was really fun. And that particular monologue is really near and dear to my heart because it's really, it shows a real, it's true. She had this experience, and it also shows a profound heart of social justice in her work. She was all about empowering women, as are you. So it's a good match.
Thank you. Karen, your actor, when she was here with it, was on her way to, it's the Walnut Street Theater, right? Where she in Philly, right?
I don't think they booked her. I'm pretty sure they didn't, but she probably just went to see it. Yes, Walnut Street Cushman managed that theater.
Yeah.
And that's back in the day when women didn't run theaters. So that was amazing.
And what I'm just, because I'm remembering a conversation with Karen about just saying, this is my wife. And I think, if I'm recalling correctly, that Cushman was responsible for moving the start time of theater to 8 o'clock.
Oh, really?
That's what she told me, because
I did not know that.
It used to go later, and men would bring their mistresses late at night. So they moved it to 8 o'clock where men brought their wives, something like that. And that her saying, her being an out butch lesbian, somewhere I think she told me that was labeled family values. And they trusted her to do it because she wasn't partnered with a man. So they were like trusting her to clean up the skeeviness. And it was just a fascinating story.
Oh, it's amazing. Well, yeah. And this particular monologue is about she got in a power struggle with the head of the theater she was working with in New York, and he was trying to, make life hell for her so she could quit, or would quit, and he wouldn't have to fire her. You know how they do. And so he cast her as Nancy Sykes in Oliver's Twist, and that's a role of a prostitute. And that is a role that nobody would want. Somebody new in the company would be given that role.
Right.
It was a tremendous insult because I guess back then people associated you with your character. Like if you played a prostituted woman, you were obviously a woman of loose morals, or they wouldn't have, whatever. It was a tainted role that she felt would, and so and he did it in front of the company, and she was, it was appropriate to flounce out and quit, but she was not a flouncer or a quitter. So she's like, I am going to see you hoist on your own tiny petard. So, she goes and studies. She's like a method actor, a century before method acting. She studies these women. And she gave a really hair-raising performance. And one of the two things stood out because, there's no video. The critics of her day described her entrance. And she got this from, she would go out to the worst slum in New York and watch the women who are probably alcoholic and drug addicted. And she enters and she's got this really battered hat, and she tries to put it on the peg and misses 3 or 4 times without even noticing it, just that kind of I can't do anything right. Things don't work for me. And then she sits down, she's got a walking stick, and she kind of sits and spreads her legs. Of course, she's wearing the long skirt, and this walking stick is between her legs, and she's kind of gnawing on the top of it. Again, like no sense of how she's appearing to anybody with a hat or this, but just the degradation and the, to me, what I'm getting is drug addiction or alcoholism, just poor coordination and just this mindless kind of gnawing on the top of the. I just thought New York had never seen anything like that. I mean, you think of it, well, even today, what's a little tart going to look like? Well, first off, a male fantasy. No, she probably came in and you knew she smelled bad, and she probably had parasites. It's like, oh my God, don't sit next to me. And it's like, yeah, that's real. I'm down in 5 corners, and this is what they look like, these women.
Right.
And she went for it. And the worst thing she did was, she's beaten to death by Bill Sykes, and that has to happen off stage because of the conventions. People would be really upset today. They wouldn't bat an eye, but so you hear him, then she's screaming, and and he comes back out to pour himself a drink or something, and she is crawling on the stage after him, cross-eyed from brain damage, cross-eyed, which I thought was so bold because, of course, being cross-eyed is funny. That's a kind of a let's make a face.
Right.
But when she's cross-eyed, oh my God, it's brain damage. Her eyes don't work anymore. And she's like, Bill, and women fainted in the aisles. And again, nothing. It was like, well, it was bad enough we're imagining a woman beaten to death, but to see, it's not sexy, it's not romantic. It's like a cross-eyed woman, just one kind word, just this has all been a dream, hasn't it? So those 3 stories just got me. It was like, damn, she went for it. There was no male gaze involved in that portrayal. None. No, none. So anyway, I wanted to really lift up the method work that she went going into 5 Points, and then that the reason she wanted to put these women on stage, it bears on what you said about she's moving the theater time so these men can't use it for, sexual rendezvous, a cover for their sex. It's like, no, it's art, you idiot.
Right.
Yeah, that, so she talks about, I took the woman's clothes, they fit me. But it isn't like, I'm just going to rip off the dead woman. It's like, I am going to wear these clothes and I am going to make people see me, even though they stepped over me to get to the theater. You will deal with me and you will deal with my death. And of course, the woman that she met and was kind of shadowing did die in front of her. So she's like, yeah, honey, I'm taking these clothes and I'm going to put you front and center. Everything about that monologue just gives me chills now. Just Cushman was a feminist. She loved women. She really showed up for women. And yeah, I just love that piece.
It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. The next question is, why did you choose it? I think you may have touched on that already. Is there anything you want to add to why you chose this specifically?
Well, I'm a survivor of child sexual abuse. My father was a perpetrator, and I didn't even remember it until I was 32, but I'm sure it drove the bus for 32 years before I remembered it. So I've got a pony in that race in terms of putting the stories of survivors on the stage and really in trying to represent survivors in ways that they would want to be represented. I feel that's really important. We wouldn't have the culture we had if we gave the mic to survivors more often.
Right.
But I love the combination of her connecting, theater, and Oliver's Twist was certainly a classical. It's like Uncle Tom's Cabin. It was a chestnut. Everybody did Oliver Twist. And she's sort of bringing in this realm of social realism and really standing with the prostituted women and demanding that people see the incredible degradation of their lives in this particular slum. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And just to be able to put theater and survival culture together is like a passion for my work.
Yeah, you ride that line where there's a huge school of thought, I think, where people assume theater is entertainment, like entertain me, tap dance, and like there's that. But I think there's the kind of theater that we both do, which is here's the truth. Here's truth. And that can be entertaining as well. But not only are we not shying from it, but we're putting it all the way there because it's real and it's interesting. And these are stories that haven't been told. And why are you watching that same old thing over and over when there are all these stories,
And the last two lines of that monologue are, she's talked about, putting Nancy Sykes on the stage because men don't see women like that in real life. They step over them.
Right.
But she said, I made them weep, and weep they did. They wept the tears that no one wept for her that night when this woman died. And then she says, real life is too painful for most people. That's why they go to the theater. And I just felt like that was like, yeah, bring it home, girl.
So
Yeah.
Carolyn, so good. Okay. And so what has your experience been regarding play developments?
Largely with the exception of Venus, I have had to develop my own plays. I've had to, have my own theater companies. I've had to stage my own workshops. During the pandemic, I did a series of podcasts, Zoom readings. Venus was just an oasis in my career because I believe he produced either as a reading or as a full production or brought in as a touring company, like with Karen Shields doing the Cushman piece, that really nurtured me as an artist and developed the work. And I would come down and I couldn't really afford to do a residency for a week and really workshop it, but you know, these were sometimes a reading, and I'd get to sit and hear what the audience thought. Or I'm sure there's some of them I saw in rehearsal at least once before we put it up, so I had some input. But it was just really valuable because I met you after I didn't think I had a theater company at the time when I met you. And it was really wonderful. And of course, it was in DC and then in Laurel. And so I had some fans in that area that would consistently come and see the work. Yeah, that's, and also I really appreciated the respect for the playwright. And you know, when I was coming along, there was no such thing as a dramaturg. And I'm glad we have them today. But also I feel, perhaps my age, but I apply to a lot of new play, you know, places I can develop it. And it's almost like they view the play as raw material. And I average about 3 to 5 years in developing a play, but I have one I worked on for 35 years, and I have another I worked on for 15 and one for 11. And this group of people who read my play maybe 4 months ago, and they just can't wait to roll up their sleeve and take it apart and put it back together. And it's like, I have maybe 200 hours into it. And, you know, I have researched, oh my God, just the Cushman play, 19th century theater, but also Rome and all of the history of the plays she performed. You know, it's just like, why would I think they can tell me the play I should have written? You know, and I've been an actor and a director and a performer. There's always good feedback, but you know, it can come from somebody that's not in theater at all. One of my friends in my living room at a reading can be like, I was confused by this, or what if you did that at the end? I've had great suggestions, but it didn't come with college degrees, you know, and I kind of know what the play should do. So when I hear a good suggestion, I'm always like, yes, much better. Thank you. Great. Let's do that. But this assumption that I am just waiting for, you know, I'm just waiting for these, you know, formally educated, heavily trained people to come in and tell me what I'm trying to do in some inchoate way. It's like, no, I live with this. And also my work breaks a lot of paradigms and creates new archetypes. So a lot of times they're telling me stuff is like, yes, I know. That's the bent wheel on the shopping cart. You know, it's like, I am going in a different direction. And it's someplace you folks haven't been yet. And I have paid with blood, sweat, tears, and low income for a long time.
Your life.
Go in that direction. And yes, I am very clear what sells tickets. Very, very clear. You're not telling me anything new. I'm not stupid. I am going in this Yes, I have an actor with facial hair, and she's not going to take her clothes off. And I know what I'm doing much more than you know what I'm doing. So I have to say, I like that Venus did not come in with like, rolled up my sleeves and now we're going to fix your play. It's like, no, you just tell me what's not working for you, and together let's talk, you know. But I feel uncomfortable in some of these, and the more prestigious the development venue, the more the presumption. And you know what I say? I feel like I come in to a gallery and they take me in a room and they're like, well, here's all the picture frames we have. So, you know, and if one of them doesn't fit, we'll just cut your painting down. Especially with the 90-minute play and the getting rid of the intermissions, which are structural features, not just time wasters. I feel, you know, they have a space for my play and they will tailor, and we need something red here. So Mona Lisa's going to wear something red. And it's like the frame is, the tail is wagging the dog, and the frame and the wall and the color of the wall is going to dictate who hangs there. And maybe it's autism, but that just fucks me up. It's just like, I can't do that. These are the plays, and you're interested in doing them, you're interested in working with me, or you're not.
Right.
But I just don't accept that thing, and I get in a lot of trouble because I don't read social cues well, but I walk into that and I start getting an uncomfortable feeling that we're not in the same movie.
Right.
And it's like, this is not raw material.
No.
No.
That's why I love it. This writing my story, I've realized, and this is why I'm talking to you and publishing the anthology, that there would be no Venus Theater without the living playwrights. I owe what I have to you. You know, there's this reciprocity. And so I think that for me, the way I was trained, it takes 3 full productions for a play to find its own identity. And so if you're cutting it down and chopping it up before the first production, it's like you're slicing the baby before it's born, not to be too graphic, but you know, let it be born. Let's look at it and let's let an audience look at it. I wouldn't select the play that doesn't play, you know, that's just part of the selection process.
You know, Ibsen with Nora's walking out on her husband, like, what kind of ending is that? And, you know, people had to make a rule at their dinner parties. Nobody talk about Ibsen. No. You know, and people grew into Ibsen, but, you know, those dramaturgs would have rolled up their sleeves. I can't leave the husband at the end. Well, that play would have disappeared in memory and history if she had reconciled with her husband. You know, and the same with, Tennessee Williams. I mean, a lot of these plays were ahead of their time, and the audience will have to grow into them. And so the first people producing, I'm like, see, everybody was really pissed at that ending when she walked out on her husband. And it's like, yeah, and they'll maybe pissed 30, 40, 100 years from now, too, because that will still be on the boards.
Right.
And I think that's part of it, is that if you're producing theater, and you should be excited about discovering a new writer and taking the audience in a direction they won't go. And maybe that'll hurt your box office, but you know, you'll be remembered and that play will be around and the audiences will grow into it. Nobody's struggling with Ibsen or Tennessee Williams today, but they were back in the day, for sure.
There were a couple of incidents for me when I was staging that I chose plays, weren't your plays, but they were 2 acts, and I do think 2 acts are hard to find, but essential to produce. And in the case of a couple of plays, the first act had a completely different style than the second act. They jumped forms. And I had a situation where this actor said, we can't do this second act. It doesn't fit. It doesn't make sense with the first act. Mm-hmm. And I found myself, because I was under so much stress, just trying to get it done at that point, on the phone with the playwright going, I think we might need to cut your second act. And I just remember her voice was so calm. And she said, Deb. I said, yeah. She goes, I love you. I respect you. Whatever you need me to do, I'll work with you on. But are you seriously calling me because a male actor wants me to cut an act? And I was on the phone going, I am. Why am I doing this? Oh my God, forget I called. And I just hung up. And I kind of had to just let that actor have his tantrums and push it along and stay true to my vision. And it worked. Like, it was powerful. It was very, very powerful. But it wasn't the tradition. It wasn't the canon. And that's what was beautiful about it. I mean, if we're not exploring new things, what are we doing? You know?
Well, I just think, you know, the public has a vision and often can't articulate it, and that's where it's helpful. Like, what did you guys think? But sometimes they're just like, well, you know, especially with the men, when I have really strong female characters, I just couldn't relate to her. I didn't like her. And I'm kind of like, I think that's you, not me. That's a you problem. That's not a me problem. Although it is a me problem if it's box office, because he's probably speaking for the majority of men who think like him, and that will show up in box office.
Yeah.
And there's just a certain point where you have to figure out, are you trying to make a living or are you trying to make art? And they're not, sometimes it's nice, the magic works and they go together. In my experience, they usually are two different tracks, you know.
More and more, you know. Yeah, I think so, absolutely. So you answered the last question as well. Has small companies like Venus helped you along? And I just remember the first thing I ever directed of yours. I think it was Rules of the Playground.
It was, and that was ambitious, and you did it outdoors, right?
It was, yes. We were working
You did it in Lafayette Park, I think, right?
in conjunction with Code Pink, because Code Pink was protesting. They didn't want to go to war, and so the spirit of the suffragists were, entertain the people picketing. And I'm like, that's us. And we were doing suffrage plays, and I'm like, let's do other plays. Yeah, and I had them in pink trench coats, hooked together reading. And at some point, a squirrel jumped on them. I remember that outside. But yeah, it was sort of, these are the rules of war. These are the rules of the playground. And I loved that. I love that it went to a whole new place, and people could see
gutsy. And I remember you also did Ugly Ducklings. And people would say to me, Carolyn, you do lesbian theater. That's bad enough. But the plays you're now writing are unproducible. This was girls at a summer camp dealing with homophobia. And the whole cast was under the age of 18. And a lot of them were very little girls. And they're dealing with homophobia. And there's an attempted suicide on stage. And people were like, well, do you just never want to be produced? And you did it, and then it was nominated for a huge national award. That was wonderful boost for me. But best of all, the woman who gave me that nomination was in the house when I was there to see the show.
Yeah.
And her son, it wasn't homophobia, but he was a victim of bullying because of neurodivergence, and he had completed a suicide. And she said, I walked in and I saw the noose on the set, and I just thought, I'm in the wrong theater. And I didn't know what to say. I sat next to her and I was like, well, I think you're right. I'm so sorry. And she said, no, I was in the right theater, because, in my play, a successful intervention is staged. In my play, people responded the way they should have, and obviously didn't in the case of her son. But she found it very healing, and she put it forward. I think I was in competition with Steppenwolf. I wasn't. Venus was. Venus was in competition with some major players, because this woman went to bat. And I'm sure they're like, who's this? This little woman's theater in a storefront. I thought that was amazing. And that play would be considered unproducible, but I felt it was powerful, and it was powerful for a woman who really needed to see it that night, So.
It was a powerful process. And I remember, I don't know if this was my staging or if it was written in the script, but the last beat of the show, I had them go in for a kiss. Was that me or you? I think that was, I don't know.
You, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think
the thing is, they've gotten the child off, the child is standing on the pier piling with the noose around her neck, and they have managed to talk her basically off the ledge. That's the big action.
But then there's this lesbian love affair going on between the counselors, and I didn't want to dampen that down, because these girls were, living in that world as well.
The point is, you don't need to. Yeah, you are a lesbian, maybe. You don't know. You're 12, but yes, you might be lesbian, and it's great.
This is natural, and it wasn't like it was just like going in for a kiss as the lights went down. It was. I don't even think we saw them actually kiss. It was like this beautiful beat of love at the end. And the actor that I had hired to play that sort of the ingenue one, I don't know if you know this story. She came up to me and said, I'm not sure if I can do that kiss at the end. Like, I'll do everything else, but I don't think I'll want to do that. And then she said, I've mailed the script to my future in-laws. They're conservative Christian. Yeah. And I said, what did you do? She said, and I go, why? Do I work for them? Am I taking feedback from them? Why would you do that? She's like, well, I just don't want to upset them. And I'm like, I'm not in the business to worry about upsetting your future in-laws. That's not what I'm doing here. And she showed up for rehearsal on a Saturday. Now, on Saturdays, I workshopped the girls. That's when we did improvisation. We did all of our workshopping. She showed up on a break, and I called Cindy, who was the one ended up playing it. And these two actors were head to head. Like, I could have chosen either one, like, really. And Cindy was already understudying. And I called her and I said, I need you to swing in and take over. And she said, okay. And so I talked to, we'll call her Kay, the first one. And she showed up, with her binder. And I said, you don't need to go into rehearsal. And she said, what? And I said, I can't have homophobia on my stage. This is not the play for you. Apparently your objective is to get approval from your future in-laws. Venus is about setting flight to the voices of women. I would never want you to feel trapped, and I am freeing you. So you go do your thing. We're good. And she just burst out into tears on the sidewalk on 7th Street. And I was so pissed. I was like, and I'll need the script. And,
I think you're less than I was, but that I'm sure.
Huh?
Did all these fireworks just went off behind you?
That was wild. That was a
What,
thing. Huh?
Did you see the fireworks happen?
I don't know what that was. That was really wild. Then Cindy showed up like 10 minutes later because I write about this, like I'm on a schedule. I had to pay per minute to rehearse, and produce. I can't waste time. And so I'm like, here, girls, this is Cindy. She'll be now playing the role. And they're like, what happened to Kay? And I'm like, oh, she loves you and she's a great person, but ended up she wasn't able to do this show. And so we're going to welcome Cindy. And I told them, like, as cruel as your characters are to each other on stage, you're going to be equally kind to one another off stage. And I'm not having it. And I just remember, like, I'm not having it, girls.
Well, the thing is like, for her, like, just, I'm not sure about that kiss. It's like, no, that's the whole thing. You're both attracted to each, the kiss is the least of it.
That means
she was going to be bad acting her way through that. My feeling when they're afraid to kiss because you might confuse the character with them means they're also going to indicate and mug all the way through the play.
Resist.
Yeah, like wink, wink, not really me, wink, wink. It's like how she could fail to see. It's if you can't do the kiss, you can't do any of the other stuff either. That she would not be able to see that. That's so obvious to me. It's like,
yeah, she was so worried. And then when I worked with the younger girls and Cindy, they bonded well. And we were doing improv and they just started saying things that day. And I'll never forget it. And they were saying, I can't take the bus. And I'm like, why can't you take the bus? Because men look at me, they try to sit next to me. One of them was like, I can't spend the night at my friend's house anymore. It's like, why? Because her dad came in the middle of the night and he did things. And I was mortified. I think I know my own history and I just thought the world was getting better. And during that process, during that show, I was like, it's getting worse. And I just felt like, how do I protect these girls? This is unbelievable. It was such
well, theater is just such a it's a permissive environment to really, especially the way Venus does it. I mean, I feel like with theater, we are in patriarchy. You are either telling lies. If you're female, you're telling lies. Or you're breaking rules. There is no middle ground. And I learned that early on because I didn't want to be poor and unpopular and unheard of. But it is. You're either telling lies that are specifically harmful to yourself, or you're saying the stuff they don't want you to say. And I feel like that all women need to come to terms with that. They also need to understand that the things that men approve of are very different from the things that they respect with regards to women. Not true for men.
right.
If men are really approving your behavior, you're probably not doing anything that's forwarding feminism. And why didn't I take that off the hook? We're just going to let that ring. But I also think that I found that when I crossed men, which is hard because I don't confront people easily or very well, but when I would do that, and they would be mad at me and I would be putting my foot down and all that, they respected me. And I'm like, wow, who knew?
Yeah.
And some of that was a game on their part, just to get you to, it's just like it's a game. So yeah, I learned a lot of things like that, as I'm sure you did. And I don't know when you started Venus, if you just thought, I'm going to do theater putting women front and center and it'll just be it'll be part of mainstream, or were you aware that you were doing something subversive and revolutionary and dangerous from the get-go, or did that grow on you as the smoke from the fire began?
I had no idea. I had no idea it was political at all. None. I
think I did, but yeah, I think that, yeah, and most women would have kicked it in at the time when they started to realize what it was.
I love it so much. I feel so deeply, passionately connected to it. I know it's the thing that saved my life. It's the thing that gave me my life. And my mentor, you know, she practices Alexander technique. And so in college, we were getting all these Alexander treatments. And then I continued studying with her for about 7 years. And I would go to her and say, I'm getting cast in these roles, but I'm putting balloons down my shirt. Like, I don't feel like I trained for this. I'm, you know, and I'm competing and I'm landing roles. So I know I'm supposed to feel good about this. Like, I'm on the inside track with a casting director at Arena Stage, and I know that's an accomplishment, but I don't like it. I don't feel, you know. And she would just say, if it doesn't exist, build it. And she would say, every time you feel confronted, understand that's just permission. That's just permission for you to do whatever you want. Every time somebody does something that you find offensive, that's just your permission slip to say or do whatever you want. That's how the world is, right? We come from different points of view. And as much as they're allowed to say whatever they're saying, you're equally allowed. And I believed that. I absolutely believed that. And I just ran with that. And not until much later did I realize, oh, people think I'm not supposed to be saying this. People think these things are not supposed to be staged. That's not the world I come from. Where I come from, I support you. I hated that play, but I'll smile and clap for it because I know I can go create my own play now.
Yeah. I think one of the reasons I'm still prolific, 45 years later, is the autism, and I didn't realize it, but we really tend not to care what people think about us. Well, we often miss the cues. We really miss the cues. Like, I look back and I see, oh, they were all making fun of me there, or I was being, really let know that what I was doing was not all right, and I missed it. There's a whole lot of my memories now that I look back, and it's like, people were pretty much bombarding me with cues, like, turn back now. And I'm just like, oblivious. And then I'm stunned that nobody likes me, or I'm, having to move to another town. And I look back, it's like, oh, there were plenty of warnings. There were plenty of warnings. And sometimes they were explicit about what I would need to do in order to stay. And I missed all of them. But I look back now, I think it was kind of a blessing. I don't like, as you know, I blunder a lot, and I hurt people's feelings when I didn't mean to, and I'm pretty typical for autism. But honestly, I'm still here and I'm still working, and many women who tried to do this work just could not take the heat. They could not take the poverty or the steady being ignored or misunderstood or lied about, or all that stuff they do. So I don't know how you did it without the secret ingredient of autism, because I am sure that you came in for your fill of trashing and slander and libel and jealousy. Jealousy is big. And women who has a vision and is actually hell-bent to realize it, for some reason, really antagonizes a lot of people.
Yeah, I think I learned to let people think what they think, and to diminish what I do with each other in their cliques, because all I cared about was doing it. I just got to show up.
Yeah.
I close the show on Sunday, start rehearsal for another show on Monday. It was my lifeblood. It's what I love jumping into worlds that have come out of the minds of other people, sometimes myself. I love exploring. It's my favorite thing. I think it just got tricky for me in our space when the misogyny started crushing me, when we had new neighbors who were walking our front door, waiting for us to come out, watching Amy and I come and go 3 and 4 times a day, just standing by their cars, watching us, saying hi, like not, but it was just like, why? And then
what were they hoping to see? What was the purpose of
hanging out by their cars? I don't know, and then a church moved in across the street where the boot factory used to be. And they had all this amplification, and they would just like preach about how women are the root of all evil. And I was like, it just, and literally smoke started coming through the walls because they were smoking the ganja. And I was trying to do a 98% pure HVAC system to clear the air to get through COVID. And I'm like, I can't, why would I invest in? And then the plumbing was leaking, and then the landlord tried to raise the rent 20%.
Oh, time to go. There's just all those signs. And suddenly you're like, I think I'm out of here.
And I think they were shocked because they thought Venus was a fixture. They thought they could, I think that's the thing with women, like they think they can treat you however they want and you'll just always be there. And then the day where you go, I'm out, they're totally flipped upside down. I mean,
it got very bad for me in Oregon with my lesbian theater company, and there was a big lawsuit and so on. And I had to move to another state. And I felt like my theater company, they really turned on me. And there's lots of reasons. I certainly am autistic. And I also was aware that I was producing my own work and I wanted it done a particular way. And I was going to get that. And I kind of rode roughshod, I think, over tender feelings, because that's how I am. And anyway, some of it was on me, but a lot of it was just the terror of doing lesbian feminist work in a small logging town. And so, but when I closed the theater and moved to another state, I felt like there was this shock, like, wow, what happened? And I'm like, well, do you remember when you did this to me and you did this to me? And then there was this meeting where you did this to me. I mean, it was, but I know what you're talking about. It's almost like they're acting under patriarchal spell. And when the wicked witch is dead, they come out of it and they're like, what happened to her? I honestly feel like, did you think I would stay and be treated like this forever? Like, are you, isn't this what you wanted? I am leaving. I am taking my theater and going. But I can just remember, I can literally, as I talk to you, I can see this look on their face because it frightened and confused me. It's like, they don't seem to understand that they had anything to do with this.
Right.
There is, and that's where you just feel like, okay, there's magic spells happening here, or hexes or something. I don't know. Yeah, I know. It's weird. And you know what, Deb? I have probably done that to women and thought, and not known I was doing it, and then seeing them, hurt and whatever, and curled up in a fetal position. Like, why is she in a fetal position? I suspect I'm not immune to whatever that was.
Same. I know. I've hurt a lot of feelings. Because I studied under male directors for so long.
Fuck yes. Oh God, yes. Oh God, yes.
And I just remember I was directing Shakespeare, and one character, she just never got off book. And she would look at me and go, I can't wait for you to go through menopause, because suddenly things I could do, I can't do. And I thought I could memorize these lines, and I just can't. And I was like, you waited too late to prepare. It's on you. You have a contract, And I was just so intolerant of her and of that whole cast. And it just, there was one point where I just like said, what the fuck was that? And stormed out of the room and came back in, and I just saw, you just see the mutiny. Like, okay, now we hate you. You don't appreciate us.
Been there, sister.
We're not on the same boat. We're not on the same team. Fuck you, And then it was like, at that show, I got sick, and they would just laugh at me when I was in the bathroom throwing up, and I was like, "Ooh, they kind of hate me." And I mean, they didn't fully hate me. We still sort of got along, but I had to sit down and have a conversation with myself and say, that's just not who I am. It doesn't help to scream at people. It doesn't help to demean people. If somebody shows up and they can't do the job, it's up to me to be the leader, to say, to manage through that situation and not just like, rah, you know, and I know it hurt feelings in the past.
People act like it's women, but it really isn't. I think every liberation movement, and I took so many of my cues from watching African American women in the, you know, Black freedom movement, which I kind of like better than civil rights because it's still ongoing. But in that movement, you know, and I saw there was, I think when people are oppressed, the kind of dynamic that you and I are talking about is rife. It's not just women. Anybody who's marginalized and tries to organize and empower is going to be. We've internalized a lot of this, you know, and we turn it on each other. And we see a powerful person realizing their vision, and we start scanning for, well, where's her privilege? What she got that I don't have? And maybe she had a safe childhood, or maybe she's got access to resources or formal education, or anything will do, really. If you want a witch hunt, doesn't take much. But it's really, I think if I'd been better prepared, if I had understood, maybe if I had studied more the history of the second wave, which was 10 years before I was trying to do my activism, I would have realized this isn't personal, because it happened to Mary Daly, it happened to Phyllis Chesler, it happened to, you know, ex Audre Lorde. It's like it would be like oh, I must be getting somewhere. Look, you know, this happened to all my role models, so I'm right on time. I mean, the same with you, but I think it's the shock and the feeling like, did I do something? Is it me? You know, is that was overwhelming. That's really hard.
Yeah, and then I think I overcompensated, you know, then I was so nurturing, so wanting to create a safe space that people started acting foolishly. And, you know, and I'm just like, I think it's just dynamics. It's just dynamics between individuals. And really, theater is you decide you're going to do this together. You just decide. And then you find your relationship in it. There has to be respect on both sides, on all sides. As soon as the respect and the trust leave the room, it's over. It's trash. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
That's what I learned. And then I had stalkers. Like, that was the other thing, you know.
Oh my God, yeah.
Just standing out in the rain in her coat. Like, she'd drive by my house, and then a feral cat lady, like, screaming at me and throwing steel, like, at places. Like, it's time to go. We're sold out. Like, you know, it's like, there's always one, bitch. And talk about jealousy. Like, she was just this sort of, I think she lived, I don't know if she was homeless, but she brought her cats to live behind the theater. And she visited them several times a day and used our trash can and fed them. And so we were having all kinds of wildlife, like, around the actors' feet. And I said, you have to move these feeding bowls. No, I don't. And it's just, I call the police, and they're like, are you going to be there? And I'm like, I'm doing a show. I'll come out at intermission, you know?
Oh
And
my God, Deb, I wouldn't be, you can tell me your stories. And by that time I had crashed and burned with my first theater company. And I just would be like, nothing on God's green earth would make that worth it to me. I'd get off the phone. I'd be like, yeah, that would be my last day with the theater company. And he'd call me 6 months later, and there'd be something worse. I'm like, well, I'm still here. Like, are you, what, you know? And it's funny coming from me with the autism, where people stigmatize and bully me all the time, and I don't even pick up on it. But it's like, it was phenomenal. And it kind of reminds me of people who are activists, and they get arrested, and then they just go and get rearrested. And it's like, there's a kind of courage or mission. I'm in awe people have it, but honest to God, you know, you had so many challenges to your authority in your job. So many of those situations would have tipped the balance for me, and it wouldn't have been worth it anymore.
yeah.
That was even with me producing my own work. I mean, you're producing other people's work, and you still would just carry on. And you did what, 4 shows a year, I think, consistently. Yeah. That's a lot. You usually farm out one of those to somebody else just to take a vacation. And I don't think you ever did.
I loved it. I love it. I think the anthology is exciting for me because I get to be in touch with even more playwrights at once, you know, and even more worlds at once. And that's the magic for me. That's just,
From your book, are you revisiting all these productions?
yeah, not in too much detail sometimes, but I am listing them, and I'm taking your suggestion and adding the photographs, and when the images really do pull it together, like, wow, like you can see the space transforming so much. And my team has been around me, and they're my favorite actors. So for every wild, hard thing, like, there's just been designers going, can I please light your shows, or let me do sound for you? And I'm like, I have no money. Like, what? And I just had this fortress of talent around me, constantly surrounding me, no matter what. I've never been alone. I mean, I've done solo shows, but they just keep surrounding me. I don't know. That's how it's been. For me, I think it's the difference between archetype and stereotype. A lot of times in the work, and I think I sort of eschew the stereotype stuff and like really want to dive into the depths of archetypal things. And with that, things are summoned, energies come in, and there's all this transformation.
Yeah. Well, I see we're at 3:03. I don't know how yeah, I know. Where did the time go?
This was my interview for you. I didn't mean to talk too much.
I think I just wind me up and I just go. Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this, Carolyn.
Oh, it was a treat to revisit our history, which goes back to whenever Lafayette Park happened. I think I was in California at the time. I'm thinking, what year was that?
2002, I'm guessing.
I was in Maine by then. But yeah, that's like 22 years ago.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It's been so great. Thank you, Carolyn Gage.
Yeah. Okay.